The young Baronne de Grangerie was lounging in a half-doze on her settee when her friend, the Marquise de Rennedou, burst into the boudoir like a whirlwind. Her entire figure was the embodiment of a storm. Her corset was askew, her hat sat crooked on her head. Sinking into an armchair, she let out a breath. Phew! It is done. Her friend, accustomed to her usual composure, started in surprise. What is it? What has happened? She exclaimed. The Marquise, as if she'd been scorched, jumped up, paced the room, and then collapsed back onto the settee, seizing the Baronne's hands. Listen, my dear, I shall tell you everything, but you must swear not to breathe a word to a soul. I swear. By your eternal salvation? By my eternal salvation. Well then, I have had my revenge on Simon. And a good thing, too, cried the Baronne. Truly? You know, he has become utterly insufferable these past 6 months. Impossibly so. Of course, I knew he was no beauty when I married him, but I hoped he was at least good-natured. And how mistaken I was. He must have imagined I was in love with his portly belly, his crimson nose, and he began to coo like a turtle dove. You see, it amused me so that I nicknamed him my cooer. The vanity of men is astonishing. When my husband realized I felt only a friendly attachment toward him, he grew suspicious, showered me with barbs, called me a coquette, immoral, and heaven knows what else. And then it grew even worse because, how to put it delicately? Well, in short, he was in love with me, very much in love, and rather often, far too often, he proved it to me. Oh, my dear, what torment it is when one is loved by a ridiculous man. Truly, I could no longer, simply could not endure it. It was as if I had a tooth pulled without sleeping draught every evening. No, worse, far worse. Now, try to recall among your acquaintances some ugly fellow, both comical and repulsive, with a portly belly, that is the most dreadful part, and with thick, hairy calves. Can you picture him? Well then, imagine that is your husband and that every evening, well, you understand. No, it is intolerable, intolerable. It simply turned my stomach, made me nauseous, I swear. I was powerless to endure it. Why is there no law to protect women in such cases? Just consider every single evening. Ugh, what vileness! Do not think I dreamed of some sublime love. No, not in the slightest. One doesn't find that sort nowadays. In our circle, all men are either horse lovers or businessmen. They adore nothing but their racehorses and their money, and they love women in the same way they love their horses, to show them off in a drawing room, just as they parade a pair of trotters in the Bois de Boulogne. That is all. There is no room for sentiment in modern life. Let us be sensible, cold-blooded women. What have relationships between people become these days? They are scheduled encounters, with endlessly the same conversations. Besides, who is there to inspire even a drop of sympathy or affection? The men of our set are mostly polished mannequins, not a spark of wit, not a grain of sensitivity. When we crave a little clever conversation, like searching for water in a desert, we summon men of art, and to us come either insufferable posers or uncouth bohemians. And I, like Diogenes, am searching for a man, one single man in all of Parisian society, but I have despaired of finding him, and soon I shall likely have to extinguish my lantern. But let us return to my husband. I was literally sickened when he would appear before me in his nightshirt and drawers, and I resolved to employ every means. Do you hear me? Every means, if only to repel him and drive him away from me. At first he was angry, and then he began to grow jealous. imagining I was being unfaithful to him. At first, he merely kept a watchful eye on me. He would glare at every male acquaintance like a tiger, and then began the most determined surveillance. He dogged my footsteps, stooping to the most vile methods to catch me out. He wouldn't let me exchange a word with anyone. At balls, he would loom behind my chair, and if I so much as began to speak, he would thrust his large head forward like a bloodhound. He trailed after me into the buffet, forbade me to dance with this one or that, would whisk me away in the middle of a cotillion, made me appear foolish and ridiculous, and created a reputation for me that was simply scandalous. I almost ceased going out into society, and in our intimate relations, things grew even more unbearable. Just think, my dear, that scoundrel treated me as it's even difficult to utter, as a common streetwalker. Think of it, dearest. He would interrogate me every evening. Who did you sleep with today? I would weep, and he would beam. And then matters descended into sheer madness. Last week, he took me to dine on the Champs-Élysées. By chance, Bobignac was at the next table, and Simon, in his spite, stomped on my foot and hissed from behind a vase of melons, "You filthy slut, you arranged a meeting with him. Just you wait." And then, you won't even believe it, my dear, what he did next. He stealthily drew a pin from my hat and drove it into my shoulder. I screamed. Everyone came running, and he pretended to be terribly distressed. Well, what do you say to that? In that moment, I resolved, I shall have my revenge, and as soon as possible. What would you have done? Naturally, I would have taken revenge. Well, there you are. It is already done.
How? How?
Can you really not guess? But still, dearest, of course. What do you mean, of course? Just recall what he looks like. That bloated face, that purplish nose, and those side whiskers that hang like a dog's ears. Yes. Now remember that he is as jealous as a tiger. Yes. So I resolved, she continued, to have my revenge, both for my own amusement and to delight you, Marie, for I was absolutely determined to tell you everything, but you, of course, and only you. Just remember what he looks like, and then imagine that now he has...
What?
You didn't. My dear, not a syllable to anyone. Swear you won't betray me. But you must understand, it's simply too comical. Just think. He has a completely new appearance now, and I find it so funny. It makes me weep with laughter. Just imagine what is on his head. The Baronne looked at her friend, and the suppressed laughter that had been bubbling in her throat burst forth. She began to laugh, then broke into such frantic hysteria that it bordered on hysterics. Pressing her hands to her chest, her body contorted, gasping for air and grimacing, she nearly slid onto the carpet. The Marquise could no longer contain herself and caught the infectious laughter. Squealing through her tears, she repeated, just imagine the spectacle. Think of those side whiskers of his. That nose. And that head, imagine it's utterly hilarious. Only remember, not a soul. They were breathless, incapable of speech, laughing literally to the point of tears. The Baronne was the first to recover, though she still trembled with laughter. Tell me then how you managed it. Speak. Oh, it's so droll, so funny. But her friend still couldn't speak coherently and merely babbled. When I made up my mind, I thought quickly as possible this very instant. And so, I did it today. Today. Yes, just now, and I told Simon to call for me here so that you and I could have a good laugh together. He will be here soon, any moment. When you see him, Remember, remember what's on his head." The Baronne gradually calmed herself, though she still breathed heavily, as if after a long gallop. "Well, tell me then how you pulled it off." "Tell me," she insisted. "Oh, it was very simple. I thought, he's jealous of Baubignac. Well then, Baubignac it shall be. He hasn't a whit of sense, but he is a gentleman and won't talk. So I went to see him after breakfast. To his home? On what pretext? Collecting donations for orphans." Go on, go on." When he saw me, he was simply dumbstruck with astonishment. But he still counted out 2 louis d'or for my orphans. And as I was preparing to leave, he asked how my husband was. There I pretended I could no longer conceal my sorrow, and poured out my heart to him. Well, naturally, I laid it on thick. Baubignac was quite moved and began to devise how he could help me, and I burst into tears. You know how one cries on cue. He sat me down, began to console me, and I kept on sobbing. Then he started to kiss me. I kept saying, "Oh, my kind friend, my kind friend." And he echoed, "My poor friend, my poor friend." And he kept kissing me. He didn't stop, and so it proceeded right to the very conclusion. And that was that. Afterwards, I staged a scene of frantic despair and reproach. I showered him with the foulest names. And all the while, I was dreadfully tempted to laugh. I kept picturing Simon, those whiskers of his dangling, and on his head. You must understand. On his head. On the way here, I could barely contain my laughter. You understand. It is done. Whatever happens next, it is done. And he was so terrified of this very thing. Let wars break out now, or earthquakes or plagues. Let us all perish. It doesn't matter. It is done. And nothing can ever change that. Just imagine what is on his head and tell me, it is done, isn't it? The Baronne asked, choking with laughter. And will you see Baubignac again?
No.
What for? I've had quite enough. He's no better than my dear husband. And once more, both women were seized by such violent laughter that they shook as if in a fever. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, and the laughter ceased instantly. The Marquise whispered, "That is he. Now you shall see." The door swung open, and there on the threshold stood a portly man, red-faced, with fleshy lips and drooping side whiskers. His eyes bulged with anger. The friends fixed their gazes upon him, and both at once collapsed back onto the sofa in a fresh paroxysm of such delirious laughter that they even began to moan, as if in unbearable pain. And he repeated in a hoarse bass, "What is the meaning of this? Have you taken leave of your senses? Have you gone mad, or what?"